perfect mess is my perfect mess. Perfect mess is my perfect mess.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Perfect Mess Podcast. I am your host, Ray Molina, and this is episode number 5. So, I'll be straight with you. I did not plan on doing a podcast tonight, or tonight, wherever you're at. It is nighttime here in the Bay Area, San Jose, and I didn't plan on doing a podcast tonight. But as life would have it, things just kind of happen, you know. And it was something that I needed to do. And oddly enough, my next podcast, this episode 5, was going to be about fatherhood. And I had a moment come up today regarding being a father and how I needed to talk to my children about current events. So I said, you know what? Let me go ahead and finish everything that I'm doing. Let me wrap everything up and let me get back to my office and let me do a podcast, because I needed to touch on this. I needed to share this with you because some of you as fathers may be dealing with this as well. And it's not a very easy subject. So earlier, you can't hear it now, but moments ago and throughout this day, there have been sirens all day. Police sirens, you name it. There's been helicopters, multiple helicopters circling the city and whatnot. And some of you may be going, what's going on in your city? Well, there's a reason why I'm in my office with the windows open, because I wanted to keep it really raw and not so formal. Because when the sirens do go off, if they do go off, and some loud bangs and whatnot, I want you to hear it, because that's what is going on right now. And what is going on is what's probably going on in a lot of the major cities where maybe you live at. And that is protests that have turned into riots. And that's what's been going on in my city. Obviously it was peaceful. Like, these things normally start off peaceful. And as the time goes by, more and more people gather. Other people don't necessarily want to be peaceful. They want to express themselves in other ways, and they're more aggressive, which always happens. It's anytime these things happen, you get two different sides. Some people want to do peaceful things, and other people want to cause havoc. And I can't say that I don't understand either side. Now, am I out there? No, I'm not out there. I have other priorities that I need to tend to, like keeping my kids safe and making sure that I'm here to do that. So my priorities are a little different right now. But I want to tell you this. The reason why this is going on right now is because of something that the day that I heard about it, I tried to avoid watching the video that was circulating all over the internet, because I just kept telling myself, I'm like, man, with all this going on with the COVID-19 and shelter in place and how many months we've been locked down, I don't need this right now. I don't need to see that and have that on my brain, man. It's just something else, you know. And I ended up watching it. I ended up watching the video. By now you probably know I'm talking about the video that had George Floyd being murdered on camera by the Minneapolis Police Department. I've seen my fair share of videos, as most of you guys who are listening and watching have yourself. You know, we've seen the videos from Rodney King. We've seen the videos from the gentleman who was selling cigarettes in New York, who got put in the chokehold from behind and died. The young man who was selling CDs in front of a gas station, who was killed. Ahmad, who was jogging through a neighborhood in Georgia and was shot. Oscar Grant in the Bay Area, who was handcuffed at a BART station and shot. The kid who was killed in Florida years ago. I'm sorry if I don't remember all these names. It happens so much that it's hard, man. It's hard to how do you keep track? I believe it was Trayvon Martin, the kid in Florida who was shot because he was in a neighborhood some guy felt he shouldn't have been in, and he looked suspicious because he was wearing a hoodie. The video that has the world or the United States up in arms right now is a video, like I said, of George Floyd, who was murdered on camera, who spent the better part of 10 minutes on the street with his face in the pavement, his hands handcuffed behind his back, and an officer with a knee in the back of his neck. And while his knee was in the back of this man's neck, his hand was in his pocket, or just on the outside of his pocket. And he didn't give a damn about it. There were some civilians who were around the area who happened to start videotaping, begging for the officers to allow this man to get up because he wasn't in good shape. He was saying, "I'm hurting, my back is hurting, my neck is hurting, I can't breathe." At one point saying, "They're going to kill me, man. They're going to kill me, please. They're going to kill me. I can't breathe. Please, man, let me up. They're going to kill me." And these civilians, this woman and this young man, arguing and yelling at the officers to let him up. "You have him under control. There's 4 of you. He's handcuffed. Let him up. He's going to die." And another point, you look, if you're paying attention, you start seeing a fluid, like a fluid substance coming from this man's body in his lower region, coming down underneath the vehicle where he's laying with his face in the concrete, turning, gasping for air. And this young man almost coming to a physical altercation with this Asian officer who's guarding this other cop and another cop behind him from people that are videotaping. Never once does that Asian cop turn around and say, "Hey, I think we're good. I think we can get him up. Get him up. Get him up before this scene gets a little crazy. Get him up. He's under control." Instead, he takes out his mace like he's going to hit somebody with some mace for them getting too close. Now, while this is all going on, I'm watching this video, and I start to look past his leg as he's confronting these guys, and I'm looking and I'm like, this guy's dead. He's not talking anymore. He's not even breathing. He's not moving. His eyes are closed. He now has stuff coming out of his mouth. He's just laying there, lifeless. And I'm thinking, how come nobody's saying he's dead? How come no one's screaming saying, yo, he's dead. He's gone. You killed him. Yo, my man, you killed this guy. How come no one's saying that? Because I'm watching this as they're arguing, and I'm thinking, how come no one is saying this? The paramedic can say whatever they want to save face, to help the department. You know, they said his time of death was sometime later when he was at the hospital. But I'm sorry, man, I've been there before. If you've listened to this podcast, you know I've been there before. I shared a story with you when my best friend was shot and died in my arms and laid there on the side of the street with me. I've been there before. That man was dead. When that paramedic showed up and they finally got this cop's knee from the back of his neck and they flipped him around and his head and his neck just like a piece of spaghetti, like, you know, you can't even hold. That's how his body was moving. That's how his neck was moving. They had to hold his head because it was lifeless. He was dead. They murdered that man on camera and showed no emotion. None. I watched that video because I follow a few, I've quite a few athletes that I support, and one of them is Steven Jackson, and I love Steven Jackson because he just has. I love the mentality that guy approached the game. No holds barred, man. He was not the dude to mess with when he played in the NBA. He was just not that dude, man. He was just cut from a different cloth, like they say. And I follow him, and I was blown away because he had put up a video saying, "This is how I gotta wake up. This is how y'all wake me up today. Y'all killed my brother. Y'all killed my twin." And I didn't know what he was talking about until I watched the video, and then I seen photos of George and realized these guys were connected. They were friends. They were boys. They were brothers. And he actually looked like Steven Jackson. I understood why he called him and why they called each other twin, and why people who knew them referred to them as twins. Steven Jackson goes down the line and starts talking about how he moved to Minneapolis to change his life, to drive trucks, and how he would send him boxes of clothes to help him out. And how George was big in the community, that people looked up to him, that he was always trying to feed positivity to the community. And when I seen and listened to Steven Jackson, that's what made me want to watch the video. I had to watch it, and I was devastated by it. Before we get, because they always show up, you always show up in the comment section of YouTube, of these podcasts, of wherever you see it, on Instagram, whatever it is. Before you show up and start coming for my head, no, I am not one of these guys who says all police officers are bad and F the police. That is not me. I have friends on both sides of the fence. I have friends who are sheriffs. I have friends who are PD. I have friends who are probation officers, parole officers, officers who work at the juvenile system. I have friends in all parts of law enforcement. I also have friends who are activists that I love and support as well. And I also know firsthand what the African American community has dealt with, because me being of Puerto Rican and Mexican descent and coming from East San Jose, where I'm from, we're very close out here. Now, a lot of you know from the other podcast, I told you I grew up I playing sports my whole life. A lot of my friends are African American. I played football. I played baseball. All of us. All of my friends, it was a pot, a mixture of just so many different nationalities. Most of us, Mexican, Puerto Rican, Filipino, Asian, black, you name it. Cuban. We all, Samoan, growing up together out here. And I can tell you that I had my fair share of run-ins with the with officers, and I've had my moments where I know I was being profiled. But I'll tell you right now, man, I've seen it so many times where my other friends were messed with so bad, so differently than I was, that I couldn't deny it. Even if I wanted to say, hey, man, quit saying that because you're just making things worse. They weren't going hard. It was undeniable. I seen it. I'm never going to be one of those ones that says, F police. I won't do it. There are good cops and there are terrible cops, racist cops, cops who have an agenda, cops who are probably nobodies growing up and now feel like a somebody because they've been issued a badge and a gun. Is that the case all the way across the board? No, it is not. Because I also have friends who come from the military that came back and joined the police force, and they are amazing officers. They do some amazing things in the communities, and they make sure to go back to the hood and talk to these people and stay rooted. But where the lines get blurred is when things like this happen and the community saying, where are the officers that see stuff like this and speak up and say, yo, these guys are wrong? Where was the officer that was on the scene looking back, seeing what was going on and saying, hey, I think we got him. There's 4 of us. He's handcuffed. Let's get him up off the ground before it gets crazy here. Okay? Because the crowd's starting to get big and it's starting to get a little crazy. Let's get him up and let's try to get him into the patrol car and let's get out of here. Where is the good cop that sees that and takes control of the situation? That's where the community gets upset. That's where people start to fight back. Because they say, if you're a good cop, then why aren't you doing stuff like this? When you see your fellow officer doing what he's doing, knowing that someone is dying or potentially at risk of dying, why aren't you stepping in? And that's hard to argue. It's hard to argue that. Some of you are probably saying, I thought this podcast was going to be about fatherhood. How is this tying into fatherhood? And I'll tell you. So, I have 2 boys, 2 sons. My youngest just turned 9 2 days ago. And my oldest in 3 weeks is going to be 11. Now today, like I said, I'm at my office and I was homeschooling them today. So they come here and I have 2 parts of my office. As you can see, there's a room here and in here. So I separate them so they can focus. And when they were done, I let them get their time on YouTube, or I let them get their time on Fortnite, whatever it is. They're kids. This is what they do. And at one point, the sirens and the helicopters and whatnot that was going on out here were so consistent and were not going away that my kids said, Dad, what is going on outside? What's going on? It sounds crazy out there. And I had just watched a video from San Jose. Now, I don't watch the news, okay? I stopped watching the news like a normal, everyday thing that I used to do a little over 3 years ago. Because I realized that the news is never going to give you the warm and fuzzy stuff that you want to hear, the stuff that you want to feel good about, that the world isn't all bad, the world isn't hopeless, that there are some great things going on. They don't give you that. When they give you that, let's say if it's 11 o'clock news and it ends at 11:30, they give you that at 11:28. That's when you get the good news. Hey, by the way, this happened today. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow. That's when they give you the good news. But for the 27 minutes prior to that, they give you every piece of bad news that they can give you. They give you the deaths, the shootings, the stabbings, the things the president said that are gonna trigger you. They give you, you name it, they're gonna give it to you, and it's all bad. I had to stop watching it because I remember it was affecting me. It was affecting my everyday routine. It was let me be honest with you. Let me be super candid. It was affecting my marriage. It was affecting my mentality. I was always talking about the negative stuff going on in the city, instead of trying to focus on the good things and trying to lead my family to a positive path. I was always focused on, man, did you hear about this happen? Hey, a mile from the house, this happened. Hey, 3 miles that way from our house, this happened. Hey, did you hear what happened yesterday? Wow, that's the school that so-and-so's son went. I was that guy. And I had to stop doing it because I remember my son, he would watch the news with me. Jordan, he would watch the news with me. And I remember he would pick up the remote when I would sit down on the couch and he'd be like, Daddy, let's see what's on the news. And finally I was like, I can't have my kid watching the news. This is going to freak him out. I stopped. I used to follow all the news channels on Twitter. I used to follow them on Facebook, Instagram, all the local ones, and then the couple of main big ones. And I stopped all of that. I unfollowed all of them. Because if you don't, they're going to feed you all day. They're going to feed you 10-second clips, 30-second clips, a minute clip. They're going to hit you with a press conference that you don't. They're going to hit you all day from all angles. Every part of social media, they're going to hit you. I cut it all off. And I started to teach myself, when you want the news, go get the news. Don't let the news come get you. Because if you do, they're going to come get you all day. And it's going to affect you. 100% true. So I stopped. When I wanted to find something out, when there was something I heard that I wanted more stories or more info on the story, then I would go seek the news. And that's what I started doing. So back to my point. Today, before my son had asked me, Daddy, what's going on? It sounds crazy. I watched a video that hit home for me. There was a video of protesters who had got onto the freeway here at home and where I live, San Jose, and had stopped traffic, which it happens in the Bay Area. We're big on protesting out here, and to be honest with you, I've been to a few of them. I went to a huge one. I believe it was Prop 209 years ago in Berkeley when they were trying to take scholarship help from minorities. I was there. It was huge. Took the BART all the way up there. And then a few other protests, whatever. But I was always peaceful. I was more of just trying to take in the information when I would go out there. So anyways, today they got onto the highway and stopped traffic in both directions. And the cops came and the cops had blocked off or whatever. But what struck me was when I saw the video, I saw the exit sign that they were standing at, and it was the exit that I take to drop my kids off at home. But what I saw next infuriated me as a father. I witnessed in this video a young man, probably in his 20s, early 20s, with a metal object bashing the driver's side window of a small SUV that a woman was driving, and she had her kids in the back. And this guy's got a mask covering his face, and he's just repeatedly bashing her window. A civilian, a woman with kids, in her car, stuck because they have blocked traffic in both ways. She's just stuck, screaming, as this young man is bashing her window right by her face. Now I watch this and I look and I'm like, that could have been me, because that's my exit. Had I had left at the time that we planned on leaving, I would have been stuck in that. Who's to say that one of these guys wouldn't have walked up to my car just to make a statement because they're angry and started bashing my window? And I started thinking, how would I have handled that? I know how I would have handled it. Like most fathers would have. My kids are in danger. I'm in danger. I'm a lion. And when you poke a lion too long, it attacks. I imagined whipping open my vehicle door, almost knocking this person down, and doing what I needed to do in order to get my kids out of there safely. At which point it becomes my life or your life, my kid's life or your life. I watched that video 10 minutes before my son had asked me what was going on. So I sat my kids down because we were getting ready to leave. And I said, I need to talk to you and I need to explain something to you about what's going on out there. And I told them and I showed them some photos. I did not show them that video. I showed them videos of people marching on the freeway. I showed them people walking down in downtown San Jose with signs, chanting. I showed them the things that I could show them. And then I explained to them why these things were going on. And I explained to them that this is going on in most big cities because people are angry, because they want justice. And they asked me what a protest is. Then they asked me what a riot was. And I had to explain to them. The reason why I decided to do this podcast that wasn't scheduled to be done today, was because when I explained to my kids what was going on, my oldest said, "Oh, I think I seen that on TikTok. They burned the police station down, huh, Dad? I saw it on TikTok. The police station was on fire and people were running around. Is that what you're talking about?" And it hit me. My kids know more than I thought they knew. And I'm on it, man. I'm on it, everything. I monitor everything they do. Their TikTok accounts, who they follow. I make sure they can't get messages. They're on Roblox. I make sure that messaging is disabled so they can't get private messaging. They don't have cell phones. They don't have Instagrams. They don't have any of that stuff. Like, everything is monitored. And here we are, TikTok. You know, the one everybody does their little dance moves with their kids, or the kids are doing the dance moves. And now people are using TikTok for stuff like this. And my kid sees it and tells me that he knows what's going on. And then he says, "But why are we doing it here? Why are we protesting here? That happened in Minneapolis." And I had to explain to him that this has been going on for years, before I was born. That back when my grandfather was in the Marines and they stopped off in Jacksonville, Florida, and went to grab a bite to eat for lunch, they were told they can't come in the front door, that if they wanted to eat, to give the guy the order and they could go pick it up in the back of the establishment. And my grandfather looking around saying, "Why do we got to do that? Why can't we come in and sit down?" Mind you, they're dressed in their Marine Corps outfits. And the gentleman telling my grandfather, I shouldn't even give the guy the dignity of calling him a gentleman. The guy telling my grandfather, "We don't serve your kind here." He said, "What's our kind?" It says no blacks. We're not black. And he says, "Yeah, you are. All you guys are black. You're just Spanish black." And I'm being nice. I think we all know he used the N-word. And my grandfather, with friends who were from the East Coast, New York, him being from out here in Cali, realizing that they're in a whole nother part of the country and they just get down a whole lot different. But I explained that to my kids, that it's been going on for years. But I also had to be careful. And dads, I'm sure you've had to deal with this. If you're dealing with this right now and you got kids who are asking questions, maybe you have little girls, little boys, especially little boys. I had to be careful with my words because I don't want to raise kids who are who grow up in fear of the police, who grow up in fear of law enforcement, who grow up with the mentality that they can't trust anybody. And I know I'm going to get people saying, well, look what's going on. They can't. I get it. But I can't send my kids out into the world believing that this is what rules the world. I have to prepare them with, yes, this is a possibility. It is a very real possibility. But I have to also tell them that just like when you go to school, there are some great kids and there are some kids who are bullies. Just like when you play sports, there are some so-so players and then there's some great players. Just like when you go into work every day, you love some of your coworkers, you hate a couple of them. That's the way it is with everything in life, including law enforcement. I had to be careful with not swaying them too hard on each side of the fence. And that's tough, man. See, let me put it in perspective. You got to understand something, okay? And again, I'm going to be super candid, and some of you may like this and some of you may not like this. I am not what you would call a Trump supporter or a Trump hater. Okay? I'm not. And I'm not riding the fence to be safe so people don't hate me either way. I am telling you 100% true that I am not. There are a lot of things I don't like about this guy. And there are a lot of things that he does that I'm like, well, that definitely didn't get done last time. And it's getting done now. And that's good. But the perspective I'm trying to give you is this. When the president had ran initially, my son came home, Jordan again, came home and said, I remember when this presidential race was going on and they were actually tallying the votes for the night that we were going to find out who won. And I was watching it, and Jordan looks at me and he says, Daddy, why does Donald Trump hate Mexicans? And I looked at him and I said, what did you say? And he said, nothing. And I said, no. Hey, I'm not mad at you. What did you say? I heard him, but I was in disbelief that he said that. Because how could he come to that conclusion? And then in my head, I was like, somebody at school. And I said, what did you say? And he said, does Donald Trump hate Mexicans? And I said, why would you ask that? He said, nothing. And I said, no. It's okay. Tell me. He said, because I heard a girl in my class telling another boy that Donald Trump hates Mexicans. And that's why she doesn't like him. And I was like, wow. How do I approach this? How do I approach this? I'm very careful with what I teach my kids. I don't want to go too hard one way and too soft the other way. So I really take my time and think about what I tell my kids. And having that conversation that day was a hard one, because I had to explain to him that there were things said by the president that didn't reflect well on Mexicans. And this was prior to him becoming the president, and then the whole locking kids away from their families at the border in the cages, and this was way before that. I think the hardest part about this is because you can't give them the adult version of all of these talks because they're too young. You can't give them the talk that I would give someone else who's my age or a little bit younger or older or whatever. You can't have that talk with your kid. And mind you, he's going to be 11 in a couple of weeks, so he was 7 at the time. So I had to be careful what I told him. All of that brought me to the conversation today. Listen to me. Like I told you, there's no script today, man. I have a notepad sitting right here that I had notes and I had bullets and things that I was going to talk about with this fatherhood episode that I was going to do. But I had to do this podcast today because of this, and I'm winging it, to be honest with you. So this is really raw, and it's going where it's going. But I had to address these things and be very careful with how I addressed them with him today. So I had to tell him the story about my grandfather. And then I also had to tell him the story of a few of my friends who are officers, who struggle with being good officers and being around things that they know should not be handled the way they're being handled. And all I could tell him was, it's like anything else. You can't bunch everybody up into one pot and say they're all the same. Because the fact that a lot of us say, hey, we get profiled, whatever, we get profiled. And that's the thing that we're fighting about. The thing that we accuse law enforcement of is, you think that we're all this way. You think that we're all gangbangers. You think that we're all thieves or criminals. We can't go and say, well, all of you are dirty, rotten, you know what. All of you. A lot of us are going to say, well, you fight fire with fire. I get it. I can't bring myself to say, hey, they're all like this. If they say we're all like this, then they're all like that. I can't do it. And I can't raise my kids doing the same thing. My youngest one, as I'm giving him, both of them, the PG-rated version of everything I'm telling you and stories and explaining to them the things that are going on. My youngest one tells me, Daddy, I'm a little nervous going home because you said that's right on our exit. I said, no, we're not going towards the downtown area. We're going to go around. We're going to go the other way just to avoid all that. But I looked at him and I said, hey, What did I tell you when this whole pandemic kicked off, when COVID-19 kicked off? I said, look at me. Do I look nervous? Do I look scared? When this whole thing kicked off, I said, what did I tell you? Do I look nervous? Do I look scared? And they said, no. I said, right. And what did I also tell you? Follow what? Follow you. Follow your lead. Exactly. Follow my lead. It is my job to keep you safe. It is my job to protect you. It is my job to be your source of refuge, your source of feeling that everything is okay, that I'm protected. My dad has control of this. We're going to be okay. That is my job. It is still my job. Even with this stuff going on right now in the city that you say you're a little nervous about because you keep hearing these sirens and you notice that there's helicopters that have been flying around for hours now. Do I look nervous? Do I look scared? No, Daddy. Exactly. I've been here before, bud. We're going to be okay. We're going to do what we're supposed to do. We're going to avoid these areas until it calms down. But we're going to be fine. You guys know more about the situation than I would have preferred you to know about. If I had any control, I would have preferred that you not see that on TikTok. But hey, what's done is done. Now it's my job to make sure that you understand we are okay. You know, it's very important as fathers, as parents, even moms. Moms, if you're listening, it's very important that we do our job of keeping our kids' spirits high, keeping our kids' spirits up, especially during these times right now, especially during the times of this podcast, during times of this COVID-19 shelter in place, because it's affecting kids more than I think it's affecting adults. You know, depression and not being around their friends and not being able to play sports if your kids play sports or if they play instruments or if whatever it is they may do. If they're always kids who love to be outside and they're active with their neighborhood friends, it's affecting them. Depression is at an all-time high. And now with all this stuff going on and kids being able to see the news on any piece of social media that they have available to them, even if it's monitored, it's our job to make sure that we minimize the damage that those things can do. It's our job to make sure that they're okay, that they understand, hey, yeah, I really wish you didn't see that, but we're going to be okay. I'm going to take care of you. Yeah, let me talk to you about that situation. But here's the reason why we're going to be okay. It's hard, man. It's difficult because I'll tell you, man, I really wish they didn't see that video of that police department in Minneapolis up in flames, and I really wish they didn't see people looting the Target. I really wish they didn't see any of that. They saw photos of him on the floor. And I wish they didn't see that photo. I wish they didn't. Because they're young. But the way things work nowadays, there are so many avenues to get to people, right? Through your phones, through your iPads, through your computers, through your TVs. You name it. And I feel like every day there's a new app that comes out that is directly catered towards the kids, and they think it's cool, and the next thing you know, some adult gets a hold of it and they start leaking stuff that kids shouldn't see. So if you are a parent, My hat is off to you. I salute you because we are in some very, very difficult times where it's going to take everything in us to shield our kids from certain things. Now, I also believe we shouldn't shield them from everything because they do need to know that the world is a mean place. The world will eat you up and spit you out. They need to know that no one gives a damn about them the minute they step out of the front door of their house. And that's the truth. But they also need to know that it's not a terrible place, that it's not all bad, that it's got some wonderful things going on. And there's still some wonderful people. There's still some great people out there. But I'll tell you, man, we've got our work cut out for us. Moms, dads, we've got our work cut out for us. My heart goes out to the family of everybody involved. I pray that all of our cities who are going through these things right now, these protests that are turning into riots, I pray that we find some peace. I pray that these officers are tried for murder. I hope that justice is served, because I fear what happens if it is not. That is all I have. Like I said, I had no script today. I really didn't know where this was going to go. I just knew what I was going to touch on, and I was going to let it go where it may. I hope you guys are in good spirits. I hope you guys are okay. I hope you're healthy. I hope you haven't lost your faith. And I hope something that I discussed here hit a chord with you and maybe helped out. And if you enjoyed it, or you thought it was something that somebody should hear, please share it. Please hit the thumbs up. Please like it. Please share it on wherever you're at. I appreciate it. That's how this thing grows. I love you guys. I hope you have a very safe, blessed night. Take care of yourselves. I feel like we're making the turn on this COVID-19 thing. A lot of the states are starting to open up a bit with restrictions. Sounds like sports is going to come back here pretty soon with restrictions, but we're starting to take steps to get back to life. I love you guys again. Thank you for tuning in. Remember, you can follow us on Instagram at The Perfect Mess Pod. Find us on YouTube, The Perfect Mess Podcast. Hit us on patreon.com/The Perfect Mess Pod. And, yeah, that's all I have, man. You guys take care of yourselves. Be blessed. And I will catch you on the flip side. I'm your host, Ray Molina. Thank you for tuning in to The Perfect Mess Podcast.
Perfect mess is my perfect mess. Perfect